Peter, if you can stand up, there's a microphone, I believe, in the aisle for you, and ask your incredibly short question.
Thank you. Eylon, you suggested that the goal of the war was to depose Hamas from power, but on October 11th, Benjamin Netanyahu said the goal of the war was to destroy Hamas. On October 12th, Yoav Gallant said, the defense minister said the goal was to wipe it from the earth, because I think they understood that even deposing Hamas would not necessarily make Hamas less of a fearsome threat. The Taliban didn't become less of a fearsome threat to the United States once they stopped holding power. Saddam and his forces didn't become less of a fearsome threat once they no longer held power. They recognized that winning this war meant destroying Hamas. And yet your own former colleague, Daniel Hagari,
Peter,
the IDF
what's your
spokesman,
question?
said it's not possible. To be clear, I'd like you to be on the record. Do you think it's possible to destroy Hamas, or were Netanyahu and Gallant wrong?
I believe it is possible to remove the Hamas terror regime from power.
Whether
whether leaders used belligerent rhetoric that exaggerated the goals of the war. No, look, Hamas needs to be destroyed. It's an idea. Some ideas deserve to be destroyed. And whether that idea is destroyed or not depends on the lessons that the people of Gaza take from this war. Will they conclude that terrorism is a dead end, that their leaders have repeatedly led them into disaster after disaster as part of their forever war against the Jewish state in any borders whatsoever, or will they take the lesson that in fact they were rewarded for the October 7th massacre? That is what is at stake here. And we are trying to convince the people of Gaza terrorism is a dead end. There is no light at the end of that tunnel.
Mehdi, you also get to respond. You can respond.
Want me to answer? I think Peter made the point very eloquently. It's a nonsensical war aims. The real war aims, of course, are what the Israeli ministers say. When Smotrich says the aim of the war is to annihilate Gaza, that is the aim. I take him at his face value.
Hassan,
He literally says that. And when they say this stuff, when they talk about resettling Gaza, when they talk about staying in Gaza, that is what they mean. This is not about, can I finish an answer, Eylon, one time?
Not government policy and goes against government.
I would just say this.
Yeah, let him finish,
If you want to convince the people of Gaza that terrorism is a dead end, then stop inflicting terrorism on them.
Well put, Mehdi. Welcome back to Z's Political Couch, everybody, where we call out the double standards faster than Eylon Levy can interrupt a question. Today, we're diving headfirst into Israel's favorite game. We left Gaza, but we kind of didn't. You know, like when someone says they're over their ex, but still controls a Netflix account. Eylon Levy and the gang are out here rewriting history with the energy of a bad Yelp review. Apparently, Gaza had the Singapore potential, but instead, they went full DIY Mosul. Because hey, what state building when you're under a blockade? Oh, and don't forget, Israel's version of freedom, controlling Gaza, air, land, sea. And oh yeah, who's get born there? Seriously, imagining needing your oppression permission to have a baby. Occupation vibes, anyone? But don't worry, this is Z's Political Couch. Let's unpack the nonsense, crack a few jokes, and grab a drink. And hit that subscribe button. Let's roll.
Every accusation is a confession, huh, Mehdi?
Our next question comes from Gillian Lederman. Gillian is an editorial fellow at the Wall Street Journal, former chief executive chair of the Israel Leadership Network. Gillian, thanks for joining us, and what's your question?
Thank you. My question is, given the current circumstances, do you believe that Israel pulling out of Gaza in 2005 was the right decision?
Who's that a question to?
It's a difficult question.
Let me just ask you, Jen, are you pointing that to anybody in particular? Both can answer it, but okay.
Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005 and never wanted to go back. It gave them Gaza. They had the option to turn it into Singapore. They chose to turn it into Mosul. They could have had a thriving state in Gaza after Israel pulled out and Jewish organizations paid to donate the greenhouses. Instead, they chose to rig Gaza for war. The tunnel network under Gaza is the largest public works project the Palestinians have ever undertaken. They did it for the sake of the October 7th massacre.
Was it a mistake to pull out? That was the question.
I don't know.
Okay. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Simple answer is, of course, Israel did not pull out of Gaza. As the ICJ has pointed out just recently, Gaza is occupied territory. Let me put it very simply to you. What Eylon doesn't tell you is when they pulled out, they kept control of Gaza's land borders,
Not with Egypt. Not with Egypt. Of course we controlled the
Israel
borders.
and Egypt
We're on the other side
kept
of
the land
it.
borders. Have you noticed I can never finish an answer without an interruption? The land borders, the sea waters, the air, and wait for it. and the population registry. If you're born in Gaza, you have to be registered with the Israelis. If you were born in New York and your birth had to be registered with a foreign country, would you say you were occupied or not occupied? Would you say you're a free people or an unfree people? It's an absolute lie. The occupation never ended.
Israel ended the occupation of Gaza in 2005.
Then why did you keep the population
Wait,
registered?
Under-
let me interrupt you. Why did you
Israel-
Hold it. We are done with the interruptions. It's just
when it's my
destructive. So you go.
The
You be
population
quiet.
registry
Your turn
isn't an
first.
interesting question because Israel runs it in cooperation with the PA as part of the Oslo Accords. Hamas is free to run its own population registry because it has effective
one
control
territory under
inside Gaza.
international law.
Mehdi,
Under
you'll get your shot.
international law, occupation requires the effective control of territory. Everywhere in the world, it is understood to mean boots on the ground. And the only reason to fabricate a new standard to say that just because Israel doesn't allow Hamas to build an Ismail Haniyeh international airport means that it is occupied is as part of a campaign to try to make Israel responsible for civilians
okay.
in Gaza so
sorry.
Hamas can take the resources
Okay,
and
Eylon,
funnel them into the war
Eylon,
machine.
we're losing
I
sight
gotta
of the
respond to
question.
this briefly, very briefly. Eylon, a moment ago, you all heard him proudly quoting the former president of the ICJ. The ICJ literally, the other day, said Gaza is occupied. But Eylon and I went to the same university. We did the same degree. He didn't do law. He's not a lawyer. The ICJ says Gaza is occupied. It's over. The debate's over. You've lost that one.
No,
and you're
that's
gonna lose
not
this
the
one.
end. That is not
Jillian.
the end. Because a basic principle of
You're wrong.
One moment.
The ICJ disagrees. You're
a
done.
basic principle.
Jillian, do you feel that your question was answered? Was it a mistake to pull out of Gaza? Because I don't. But we're going to move on. Thank you for the question. It would be helpful, and I realize you're both very passionate and have a lot to say about this, but it would be helpful, at least at the beginning of your answers, to stick to the questions.
I did. I said they didn't pull out because they never pulled out. I mean,
Okay.
I don't accept the premise of the
All right, fair enough. You
Israel
question.
pulled
No, next
8,000
up.
settlers.
Next up.
It ripped people out of
I
their
know.
homes. and gave them an
I
opportunity.
was there. I witnessed it.
He witnessed it, Mehdi. It happened.
The part that you're talking about. Next up, we have Dean Obeidallah, a lawyer, a comedian, and a journalist who is host of the Dean Obeidallah Show and a frequent commentator on CNN, MSNBC, and the Daily Beast. Dean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I have a question for Eylon. You've defended everything the Israeli military has done, everything, and Mehdi's gone through it. My family lives in the West Bank. My question is there anything that you would condemn Israel for in terms of killing Palestinian Christians and Muslims, or are they all inhuman in your view and not worthy of any sympathy, dignity, or self-determination as a people?
All right. Hang on a second. Hang on. I have an issue with the question. The first part of the question, is there anything you would condemn from Israel? Legitimate question. But the assumption that if he feels differently, that he has no sense of the humanity of Palestinians is a bit of some baggage loaded into the question. So why don't you take the question? Is there anything that Israel is doing that you would condemn?
I have gone on TV as a government spokesman when the army said that there was a particular mistake and a certain target should not have been hit. We fess up and admit our mistakes because that is what a responsible military should do.
You can answer that.
Okay.
But Israel is fighting an enemy whose use of war crimes is strategic and systematic. They're not investigated on Hamas's end. No one is ever called to account. Its use of war crimes against its own civilians while they hide behind them in their schools and hospitals to fire at us is strategic and systematic. And so I stand by my country as it fights to use proportionate force to dismantle the Hamas army of terror. Because yes, my neighbors are human.
Okay,
Because
hang on.
I want a better future.
I have
for
an
them.
important
please,
I have a very
because
important technical program note. I've received a message that the audience clapping volume is so loud that in the recording, very frequently, it's been impossible to hear what our debaters are saying. And
Don't clap.
And so what I would like you to do is to clap in between their points. Let them finish and then go for it, please.
The gentleman challenged my humanity and I would like to defend it.
I tried to let this
I
go.
want a future of peace between us and our neighbors. That cannot happen as long as the Hamas terror regime is in power.
Okay.
On the subject of, I'll wait for the applause. On the subject of Eylon's humanity, I asked him earlier if he supported the release of Palestinian children. He refused to say so. He can tonight. We'll all wear this pin. Let me
Mr.
say
Hassan,
this on the
any
West Bank.
children?
Let me say this on the
talk.
West Bank. He cannot help but cherry pick the evidence. He cannot help but cherry pick the evidence. He just said a moment ago, he tried to gaslight you. He said, Hamas is never held to account. Actually, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court gave out 5 arrest warrant requests. 3 for Hamas, 2 for Israel. I support all of those arrest warrant requests. Do you? Do you?
Mr. Hassan.
Do you? It's a yes or no question.
Every single line.
It's a yes or no question.
Every single
Do you
line.
support accountability for all of them? as the
Absolutely,
ICC is
but
asked for?
you and what
Do
army?
you support arrest warrants
Because
for
you
Netanyahu?
and
Wait, now we
I
can't
support
hear what you're both
accountability.
Do you
saying.
support arrest warrants for Netanyahu?
No,
Oh.
Mr. Hassan, because every
so only
single
okay,
line,
one side.
every single line in the request
some of us
for
are
arrest
consistent.
warrants
Wait a
by
minute,
the-
wait a minute.
by the prosecutor
Mehdi, we
of the
can't hear
ICC is based on lies.
Oh, here we go again. Eylon Levy out here claiming ICC arrest warrants are based on lies. My guy, are we watching the same movie? You can't scream accountability in one breath and then call literal war crimes investigations a conspiracy in the next. That's not how justice works. That's how a plot twist in a bad soap opera works. And let's talk about these double standards, shall we? When the ICC goes after Hamas, it's justice prevails. But when Israel's name pops up, suddenly the ICC is writing fiction? Bro, you can't pick and choose which arrest warrants fit your narrative, like you're shopping at Zara. Eylon's logic is like saying, I believe in law and order unless the cops pull me over. You want humanity, accountability, then stand for it across the board. Or just admit your version of justice is more selective than a nightclub bouncer on New Year's Eve. Let's keep rolling.
Like the allegation of starvation, impossible to reconcile with over 1 million tons of aid that have
There are
entered
literally
Gaza
69
since the start of this war.
going in right
Aboard
now.
more than
That's a lie.
52,000
It's gaslighting.
trucks. 52,000
69 trucks right now. Did you know that?
Mr. Hassan,
69 trucks, according to
according to who?
15. According to 15 aid agencies.
Who are they
Who should we
quoting?
believe? 15 aid
Who are they
agencies or
quoting?
you and
All right.
Netanyahu?
Mr. Hassan, who are they
Who should we
quoting?
believe?
Mr. Hassan,
15 aid
Mr.
agencies
Hassan.
or you?
These aid agencies are quoting UNRWA.
The aid
Do you
agencies are
believe that
Hamas.
UNRWA's statistics are accurate? Yes or no?
Actually, no. they're
Excuse
not.
me, wait a minute,
Because
wait a minute,
on
wait a
their
minute, wait a minute, wait a
dashboard, but
minute.
if you don't
Wait
know
a
the
minute,
statistics
wait a
are
minute,
accurate,
wait a
why
minute,
should I believe
wait a
them?
minute,
It's a lie.
wait a
Sorry,
minute.
it's a lie.
Is this helpful? Yes, for some, okay.
Well, lies need to be stopped.
I would just like to ask you to take turns
Okay.
and
I'll wait.
not talk at the same time.
Got it.
You're doing worse at waiting. Get better.
Over 1 million tons of aid. Now, according to Mr. Hassan, I don't know what double-digit number he quoted, comes from UNRWA. UNRWA's own dashboard on its website says that this is an incomplete register of data, that it cannot monitor all the cargo going in. Israel is monitoring it. UNRWA is undercounting it by a factor of 10. That's how you get to the bizarre statements like imminent famine in Gaza, because the IPC Review Committee said that that assessment was based on not counting all of the trucks that have gone in. They literally undercounted trucks in order to make this horrific
all right.
allegation of starvation.
So the entire...
Elon, your
Can I
point is
respond
made.
to the speech?
Let's respond.
So you just began the whole answer premised on a lie. It's not based on UNRWA statistics. It's based on their own experiences
They do
at
not
Israeli crossings. David Miliband, Eylon. David Miliband, a man you know, we're both British in front of this audience. David Miliband was the former foreign minister of the UK, very pro-Israeli politician, served under Blair and Brown, not some Palestinian lover. David Miliband said on CNN, our trucks are being stopped because they're finding a tiny little surgical scissor or a nail clipper and they're sending the trucks back. David Miliband is not some hater of Israel. Cindy McCain is the head of the World Food Programme. She is the widow of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, John McCain. She has accused Israel of blocking aid trucks, killing aid workers, starving children. Cindy McCain is not UNRWA or Hamas.
Dean, we are a long, long way from the question you asked. I don't know. That's bad moderating. I'm sorry that I... We have another question from John Levine. John is a political reporter for the Sunday New York Post. He has credits on CNN.com, The Atlantic, The Chronicle of Higher Education. John, thank you for joining us. And come on in with your question, if you could stand up.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. My question is for Mehdi. I think it's an easy question, so I hope we can get a direct answer. I'd like to ask you about your new media startup, Zeteo. In May, Rolling Stone reported that
John,
you
this has
raised.
got to be on the point we're
It
debating.
relates to Qatar, which I believe was brought up in the debate.
We're debating whether
All right,
Israel's actions were justified. That's not on point. I'm sorry, I got to pass on it.
I'm happy to take the question. John, I'm happy to take the question. I'm happy to.
We're not here to debate. We're not here to talk about your
I'm happy to
career.
take the question.
I know you are, and I'm not. So I'm sorry, John. If you want to come up with a question that's on point about Israel's actions in Gaza, go for it, please. Yeah, I can, because this is a debate where you ask questions.
I mean, now I really want to ask the question. I'm just curious. I just want to answer the question.
You can talk afterwards. All right.
I mean, the dude works for the New York Post. I prefer not to talk to him, but it's not my debate.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We are coming down to the end for our closing statements, and that's where each debater has the floor again exclusively to make their case one more time for you. Eylon, you're up first in this. One more time to remind people, I think they know that you're arguing that Israel's actions in Gaza are justified. You can take the floor, and you have 2 minutes to tell us why. 2.5 minutes to tell us why.
After the sadistic massacre of October 7th, Hamas immediately told us, if you leave us on our feet, we will do this again and again. It wasn't enough to cremate little children. It wasn't enough to commit acts of gang rape, pedophilia, necrophilia. It wasn't enough to gag people, bind them, tie them to trees and strip them. They told us, we're coming for you. If you leave us on our feet, we will do this again and again. This war has been horrible. We have paid a horrific price for it. We are trying to prevent the threat of a repeat October 7th massacre. And we are fighting a sadistic enemy that rigged the battlefield in a way that said, we've hidden our military assets under civilians. The only way that you can get to us is by going through civilians. And that's why Israel has taken more actions than any military in the history of the world. And so every commander from Afghanistan and Iraq will agree, in order to keep the civilians safe from their own leaders' sick strategy of trying to sacrifice them. That is why it keeps telling them to evacuate. It never designated a safe zone where Hamas terrorists could abuse hostages with impunity. It told them to go where it is safer and where Hamas is not. And on every occasion, it has been stymied by UN agencies saying, no, keep them in Hamas strongholds. By Hamas trying to fight to keep them in the strongholds, while we try to keep them safe from their own psychopath leaders. I asked Mr. Hasan, removing Hamas from power, legitimate, yes or no? And he wriggled out of it. He said, well, defending Israel is legitimate, but not the point you go into Gaza. Okay, his response, end the occupation. Let Hamas have an Ismail Haniyeh international airport. Let it have a Mohammed Deif naval base. There is nothing you can do with a terror regime that is sworn to your destruction, whose goals are legitimately genocidal. We need this war to end. But we need this war to end in a way that ensures that Hamas cannot restart it at a time of its choosing, feeling emboldened and empowered because of international pressure generated by people like Mehdi Hasan to keep saving it from the wars that it starts.
And I just need to say it. And Mehdi Hasan, you have the final word in this debate one more time. Your argument for why Israel's actions in the Gaza war were not justified.
Ladies and gentlemen, were the actions of Israel in Gaza justified? Look, the argument is pretty simple tonight and pretty hypocritical from Eylon. What we've heard tonight is that nothing justifies October the 7th, but October the 7th justifies everything. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you, no, October the 7th does not justify everything. It does not justify the suffering in Gaza. It does not justify the killing of kids in Gaza. It does not justify the starvation in Gaza. It does not justify the rape and torture of Palestinian detainees, which Eylon refused to condemn tonight. It does not justify any of that. It doesn't justify the tearing up of the Geneva Conventions, the defiance of international law and the ICC and our own Leahy law. Yes, October the 7th was a war crime, but the response to a war war crime is not to commit your own series of war crimes on an epic scale. 33 times as many people killed since October the 7th as were killed on October the 7th. And I'll say this to you. Look, very, very clearly, if you support this motion tonight, you are opening the gates of hell. Not just in Gaza, but globally, because every dictator and tyrant around the world will say, Israel's actions were justified? Then so are mine. Putin, Assad, Kim, they'll all say, Israel killed kids. Israel killed aid workers. Israel killed journalists. So can we. And I will be very clear. I will be very clear with you tonight. If you are here tonight, ladies and gents, if you're here tonight to defend what Israel's done, knowing full well what Israel has done, if you're defending the human suffering in Gaza, the amputation of little kids, if you're doing that in full knowledge, then you're not just here to defend the indefensible or justify the unjustifiable. I'm sorry, you're a sociopath. And I will say to you, please, don't be a sociopath tonight. Don't support war crimes. Don't defend a genocide. Join me and every human rights organization in the world, every humanitarian aid agency on the planet, every American doctor and nurse who's been out to volunteer in Gaza. Join us in opposing this ridiculous and offensive and horrendous motion. And on behalf of the Al-Dos family, who Eylon clearly doesn't give a damn about, I beg to oppose this motion.
I am curious. Did anybody have their minds changed tonight by anything they heard? Wow. All right. Thanks. John Levine. Yeah. So here's the thing. The reason I turned down John's question, we really try to preserve the integrity of what a debate is supposed to be, and it's supposed to be about the question, and it's supposed to stay on the question. It's supposed to avoid personal attacks. But you came all this way, and Mehdi would actually, it seems, like to answer the question, so go for it. This is an extra.
You were accused of being in the pay of Qatar. Eylon accused you of being in the pay of Qatar earlier. You took objection to that. I'd like you to be able to dispel that you're taking any money from Qatar by confirming that you're not taking money for Zateo for Qatar. Is Qatar funding Zateo? Yes or no?
It's a great question, John, because you work as a media correspondent for the New York Post. No, I'm not. I'm answering your question. Patience. We waited for you. You're a media columnist for the New York Post, were you not?
I'm a political reporter for the New York Post.
You were at one time a media columnist. You should read the Washington Post interview that I did literally when Zateo was founded. And Jeremy Barr, an excellent reporter, slightly better one than you, he asked me that question. And I said, no, we haven't taken any money from foreign governments or foreign citizens. Every investor in Zateo is an American citizen, has nothing to do with Qatar. So nice try, better luck next time. By the way, since we're all in the spirit of asking questions, how do you feel about taking money from the racist Rupert Murdoch every day? All right.
I regret taking that question. I regret the times this debate failed to be high-minded by two people whom I otherwise respect. And I want to say that concludes our debate. I want to thank our debaters, Eylon Levy and Mehdi Hasan. We appreciate that you did show up and that you at least talked, maybe not to one another, but at one another vigorously and vociferously. And in fact, you were listening to one another, if only to counter, but you were listening to one another, and I think that's progress. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for being here and being open to debate.
Well, folks, Eylon Levy gave us a show tonight, a masterclass in double standards wrapped in deflections. First, his aid trucks argument was like saying, I fed you last week, so stop complaining about being hungry today. And when asked to back his claims, he blamed United Nations Relief Work Agency for bad math. Sure, Eylon, aid workers are definitely undercounting trucks just to spite you. Then came the Hamas hide under civilians excuse, as if that justifies bombing neighborhoods. It's like saying, I had to demolish the buildings because the guy I don't like was on the roof. Mehdi dismantles this with facts and receipts, leaving Eylon to pivot to emotional appeals and gruesome details about about October 7th. Tragic, yes, but using it to sidestep criticism, cheap. And that Qatarian accusation, what was that about? An epic backfire. Mehdi swatted it and landed a perfect Murdoch comeback. It's clear, Eylon's strategy was all smoke, no fire. Civilians in Gaza don't deserve to suffer, and excuses don't erase accountability. Mehdi won this debate with facts in my eyes anyway. As for Eylon, maybe next time, bring more logic with accountability. Thanks for joining me, guys and gals. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative. Catch you all on the next one.